My dad was an only child growing up. And so I think that for my dad, in his life, thinking of, okay, I'm going to pass this on to the next generation. And so whenever he started his own family with my mom, and they found out they were pregnant with their firstborn, it was before, of course, like the day of ultrasounds and, knowing the gender before the due date. They had no idea. And so my dad has always told me this story. He said, they're in the birthing room and my mom has, just delivered me, and there I am. And my dad is looking at the doctor, and the doctor's holding this little baby. And the first question out of my dad's mouth is, "Hey, Doc, is it a farm boy?" Back to the land where I first began. My name is Stacie Marshall, and I grew up on a 300-acre farm just about 15 minutes from here in a little small farming community called Gore. Mama nursing me, Daddy holding my hand, showing me the promise, teaching me the land, giving me instructions they learned from the place that they began. That farm and that place, that community has just been a place that has held my story, but it's also been a place that's held my family for generations and generations. And when I think about home, I immediately picture the hills and valleys of that community and that farm. Back to the land where my people dwell, to the ones I have buried and said my farewells. Back to the place where their silhouettes stand, strong in my memory of them working the land. Again, I came from women that knew a lot more about the land than they let on. I remember my mama teaching me how to be in the garden and, find the type of worms that were eating the leaves and pick them off. And I remember her showing me how to find a tomato that was ripe and good for eating. And I remember her being the type of grandmama that would be working out in the field in her dirty blue jeans and my papa's work shirt and have her hair tied up in a bandana and wash her hands and go in and cook the family, a huge meal. And so it never was like super sharp lines. It never was like, oh, the women stay in the house and the men stay in the field. There was like this overlap, but then there was also very much kind of this like, okay, so the men on the property are going to kind of take more ownership of the equipment. Back to the land where some dreams died, tractor tombstones, pollution in the sky, the fields crying out, too fast, no more, breathing dust and fatigue from a farming store. When I think about the equipment piece, and I think about how that is such a new thing in the last 50 years. That really was something that came about with my grandfather's generation. But when I think about my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather, that, I think that's what my grandparents grew up farming. The whole family was involved, and there wasn't as much as this mechanical, industrialized stuff to maintain. And so it was just togetherness. It was just working together. And obviously there was some patriarchal stuff going on there, but it was we're together working it out. But something happened in the Industrial Revolution that just became this huge shift in farming, I think specifically for families. I'm in this place of inheriting all of this machinery that my dad and my grandfather have acquired, and I don't know it. I don't know it. It's intimidating to me. And honestly, when I think about it, I think I've had to wrestle with that, because I think I felt this kind of I should know more about this. And then kind of asking the question why I don't know more about this. But then even feeling frustrated within that, because it's like, I don't want to know more about this. And that's not a gender thing. There's more equipment to maintain. You have to be trained, and you have to even have awareness of how machinery operates. And a woman is completely capable of learning and doing that thing. I mean, we saw that, through World War II, all these women that took over that in the workplace. But I think that it's just very interesting because on the farm, it definitely was kind of this like, Daddy and Papa are going to take care of the tractors, and we're going to come alongside them and help them, but we're going to be in the kitchen, and we're going to help also, like, make the meals. I don't really remember my dad and my grandfather ever cooking. Back to the land that has stood the test of times of my grandfather and his father and his lineage down the line.
As a boy and all, the technology has got so much better with the farm equipment. The old stuff I got now and all, and can you imagine having like that tractor behind you there, trying to do a crop with it or anything now other than it's just a hobby now for me. But I remember that we used to take a tractor that size and we'd haul hay with a wagon, or some of these back here and all that size, and it was square bales. All we knew was square bales of hay to put up back then.
Back to the land where food should grow slow, self-sustaining, not money draining, not hurried or oversold. Back to the land where vegetables wear dirt and taste deeper and richer and more connected to the earth.
The insecticide and herbicides have changed from using them on our crops and all, and what we can use, and EPA has regulated a lot of stuff that's been harmful to our environment and to our soil.
I think farmers are pretty super slow and, to change methods and things. Again, like a lot of these methods that we're talking about with the spraying and the herbicides and pesticides, now we're like 40, 50 years in them. So like turning the ship, it feels like turning a big ship. That's what I kind of feel like I'm doing. Like I feel like I'm at this, like my dad's called me like, okay, it's your turn to be at the wheel. And I'm like turning the wheel a little bit. I haven't even started yet. Like I'm not even on the property yet. But even as I have conversations with my dad, it feels daunting because I'm like, I don't know how to get out here and live and do what I want to do and do what I know that feels right to do in farming and ethical for me personally. It's hard. Sometimes I do think, man, maybe it would be just easier for me to sign a check over to Tyson and get a couple of chicken houses on my land. There's been the awareness that things are different. Again, I think it's been just like the survival zone of like, we got to do what we got to do to make it. And that's where, it's so complicated because, again, like, I don't want to be perceived as I'm coming in, trying to do this. Like, I think it would be very easy for my neighbors to perceive, like, maybe some of what I'm doing as, like, opposite to what they're doing, or kind of like, all right, I'm gonna, be the savior on the white horse and come in and do organic, and that's the new way. And I think for me, like, I don't even look at that model as being a new way. Like, I look at that model as being something that was in existence that we're trying to get back to. And obviously, like, I'm going to need technology. I'm going to need some of this equipment to farm. But with, everything we know about the environment, like, the type of farming that we are doing today cannot be sustained. Back to the land where the future is unclear, but I can see a glimpse of my children running in their ancestors' fields. I think that when we move out there, it's going to be a lot more required of them, a lot more required of all of us as a family unit, like just being together and working together on the farm. So, yeah, I hope that makes them feel really strong. That's my hopes. I hope that, I know it did for me. I felt the strongest when I still feel the strongest when I'm on that property. I feel the most connected to myself when I'm on that property. Back to the land to one day reclaim, restore, redeem some of that shame. Back to the land that once birthed me to start a new beginning and change its history.